There you go. Hey, Tim Shorrock, here he is, correspondent for The Nation. Tim, how you doing? Thanks for doing this.
I'm very well, thank you.
So, Tim, Korea has been globally recognized, South Korea, for its success in dealing with the coronavirus. And, it seems to me you cannot disconnect that success from the fact that they have a really robust universal healthcare system. And you also can't disconnect that success from the fact that they have, especially in a time where, governments across the world are let's say, disappointing. They have a very dynamic, progressive government right now. So can you talk about what the Korean health system actually looks like and who's in office right now and how that's related to their success in dealing with the virus?
Okay. Well, let's start with the fact that, you have a government that cares for its people. That's the critical point.
That's a nice thing.
Moon Jae-in, the president now, who was elected in 2017, is a longtime progressive. He was very active in the democratic movement during the 70s and 80s. He was arrested a couple times. He was a human rights lawyer under the authoritarian governments. And, he was elected in 2017 in the aftermath of what they call the Candlelight Revolution in South Korea. People may remember in 2014, there was this terrible incident where this ferry loaded with high school students, capsized and sank in about an hour and a half. And the government completely failed in trying to rescue anybody. And it was a catastrophe. Just an utter catastrophe. And people in South Korea were just shamed and horrified at their government's inaction and the way the government mishandled this terrible event. And that was one of the issues that led people into the streets to protest the presidency of Park Geun-hye, whose father was the former dictator of South Korea. And millions of people literally poured into the streets in 2016, 2017 to force what they wanted was the impeachment of their president. And she was impeached, and she was thrown out of office and actually was tried and convicted on charges of corruption. But the point is that, Moon came to power after that. It was elected, by a very wide margin. And, people really wanted a government that would care for the people instead of, ignore their needs and in the arrogant way that they had. And so that was a very big commitment of Moon Jae-in. And then on top of that, of course, you have this healthcare system, this national healthcare system, which has been in place for quite a long time. It was actually, even during the authoritarian period, that's where its roots are. And after the democratization is when it was fully, put into place. My experiences with it is, personally, I've gone to a hospital in South Korea, and I've been treated by doctors, and I've been, amazed by, the very quick treatment you get and how you're handled. And also that, you pay almost nothing, for your health care. And so, it's a national system, and it's very well run. And so, that's really the key to understanding it. And I would say, a second part is that, in South Korea and Vietnam and other Asian countries as well, the idea is that, you do what you can to help your society. And it's not individual first, it's the society and the group. And so, just a simple thing like wearing masks, right? When I grew up in Japan and Korea, I was, really, you'd always see people in the streets that had colds that had masks on. And the idea was to protect other people. You right. Wear a mask so when you sneeze, you don't infect other people and give other people colds. And especially in the society that's in cities that are very dense, Tokyo, Seoul. That's really critical, right? To not spreading any kind of disease, and people are used to that kind of thing. But the idea is you wear the mask not to protect yourself from others, but to protect others from you. And I think that's a fundamental kind of thinking that's true in Asia. That's not so true. Well, you can see it in America. It's all me, me, me.
Yeah, so you don't have guys in South Korea with, Punisher bandanas going to fast food spots with machine guns, demanding that they don't have to wear a mask. Yeah. So what about talk more about his agenda in general? I guess start domestically, because again, you've really pointed out that this is an impressive leader, both in terms of his history, but he's got an agenda on labor. He's got an agenda on ecology, and obviously also an attempt to build some actual stable, peace in the Korean Peninsula. But start domestic first.
Well, when he was elected, the big issue then, and it's still a very big issue, is unemployment among youth, and the fact that many people are underemployed. There's a lot of this kind of work where you don't work. Employers hire you not full time, and so you don't. You may work 25, 30 hours a week. You don't have health benefits and that kind of thing. Many workers in South Korea work under those kind of conditions, and it's really a serious issue, and has been for quite some time. And so that was one of the first issues he ran on, actually, and was talking about when he ran. I was actually living in Gwangju, South Korea, when Moon Jae-in was running for president, and he came down there 3 times on his campaigns, and one of the big the first issues he would talk about would be jobs. And creating a better economy, especially for all these young people, and trying to better the conditions for workers in these kinds of part-time jobs that don't have benefits. And one of his first actions as president after he was elected was, he went to visit the airport in Incheon, where there's government run, and there's a lot of these kind of workers were there, and he that was his action, was to show that he was concerned about it, and they've taken steps to alleviate that kind of unemployment and underemployment. But it's very tough right now, especially with what coronavirus has done to the economy. But the second thing he ran on was the issue of engagement with North Korea, and he. Wait,
just 1 minute, just 1 sec before we get there. But I mean, obviously, it's been hurt by Corona, and that's a big setback. But I mean, he's popular. He's made some inroads because they just had, I don't know what they would be, the equivalent of like off-term elections or local elections just a couple of weeks ago, and his party performed very well. I think they even exceeded expectations.
It was a landslide victory for Moon Jae-in's ruling party, the Democratic Party of Korea. It was an election. It was a congressional election, National Assembly, and so he won a very large majority, and an alliance with another small left wing party. The Democratic Party of Korea now has a veto proof majority in the National Assembly, which is going to help. And one of the things I pointed out recently in a recent article I did for The Nation was before the election, the party endorsed a Green New Deal for South Korea. And, that's one of its campaign platforms is to end carbon emissions. And South Korea has a big problem with carbon emissions. Its air is really dirty, and there's a lot of polluting industries, and air also blows in from China and the Gobi Desert that really creates serious problems. When I was there, in the last couple of times I've been there, the air has been in Seoul in particular has been really bad. So that's been a big issue.
So now talk about the other aspect, which was an engagement with North Korea. I guess, what he ran on, and this was like a big drama a couple of years ago. There were those meetings with Trump, and it always struck me. I'll just say that, watching Moon Jae-in manage both these individual egos and also this just incredibly complicated situation of his own policy agenda and taking on the U.S. national security state and a narcissistic, president who's all over the place, and then also, all of the dangers and problems of the North Korean government. I mean, that was incredible to watch him kind of operate.
Well, this whole process was set up, people may remember during the Olympic Games in the Winter Olympic Games in early January 2018, 2 years ago, when for the first time, senior leaders from North Korea crossed the DMZ and went into South Korea as Moon Jae-in's guests, and his Kim Jong-un didn't go at that time, but his sister did, and other very high-ranking officials were there at the same time that Vice President Pence was there for the Olympics, and other officials from the United States. And that's actually when the peace process began, because during those times, Kim invited Moon to meet. And they did about 2 months later, and had a summit at Panmunjom at the border area, and agreed on a number of steps. And then later they met in September of 2018 and set out a whole agenda of peace process through economic development, mutual economic development, and that out of that came the invitation relayed through Moon Jae-in to Trump to meet directly with Kim Jong-un, and that's how that meeting in Singapore came about in June 2018. The struggle has been the U.S. has had a very hard line. We're not going to there's very tough sanctions imposed on North Korea and have been for many years, but especially after 2017, the UN added a whole bunch of sanctions in retaliation for their testing of ICBMs. And so those sanctions, the U.S. position has been, Trump's position has been no movement in terms of we're not going to lift any of these sanctions until North Korea agrees completely and has shown signs that it's given up all of its nuclear weapons. And Moon Jae-in has been trying to work with the U.S. in trying to say that, look, North and South Korea working together will really help the peace process. But to do that, do things like link their railroads and some of these other projects they've been talking about, like investing in tourism in North Korea, so South Koreans can go to North Korea and visit, and vice versa. Some sanctions, have to be lifted or temporarily lifted so that those things can happen. And the U.S. has been unwilling to lift those kinds of sanctions. And so there's been kind of the talks with U.S. and North Korea haven't moved anywhere because of that, but also the process of trying to have engagement between North and South has stopped because of the sanctions issue. And so now, now that he has this mandate with the election, his party has a very strong mandate to continue this. He's trying to take some steps that would, be able to, North and South would be able to do things like this railroad construction, mutual work on the railroad system. He's trying to do that, move forward without, without violating the sanctions, but without, getting, this kind of permission from the U.S. to do that. And that's kind of where things stand with that. But, it really has fundamentally changed the atmosphere in South Korea around the border area, the DMZ, as a result of the meetings between Kim and Moon in 2018. There was a major de-escalation along the border. Guard posts were taken down, mines were removed, and that kind of thing. So the possibility of an armed confrontation there is much less than it was, and that's very important, and that's very reassuring to people in South Korea.